Okay. Well, the computer's talking to me. Okay. Okay, I guess. Okay. Hi, I'm Roger Alcoholic. How you doing? Good to see you all. Again, like Karen just said, if you look on a map in Idaho and the Panhandle, look all the way at the top and right by Canada. That's where we are right now. We just saw the sunset across the. We're kind of on a bench on a mountain top, and then across there's a valley, and then on the other side there's Selkirk Mountains, a beautiful sunrise. We just saw pink or sunset. That's okay. Sunset over there, and it's just beautiful, just beautiful. So I'll talk about more about how we got there maybe later. But yeah, yesterday is my 40th anniversary, and wow, that was kind of that was something. And just to show you, like what the people are up here, you know, Naomi and I are from Ohio, where Karen's at, and we moved up here in 2015. And back in Ohio, you celebrated mostly anniversaries, and up here they don't celebrate the meeting anniversaries, but they make a big deal when somebody has a AA, and they call them birthday. When they're AA birthday, and there's not a lot. It's a pretty small community up here. So they, they had balloons and a cake, and then after they announced it, one of the guys had some silly string and shot some silly string on Naomi and I. So it, you know, that's the way AA is up here. So anyway, but I'm just gonna kind of dig in here and then start from the beginning. Sometimes I get rambling and um, I go off too much. So anyway, it was I really started doing mind altering things around age 12, and then age 14 I really I started with the alcohol. Took my first drink, and I'll never forget that. We went out, me and a bunch of buddies, and got some alcohol and drank, camping out, and remember drinking and getting drunk, and throwing up and passing out and blacking out and not remembering a whole lot about the night. But I remember one of the moments when I'm just standing there and I'm just feeling drunk. And man, I'm going, this is it. This is the feeling. I see why all these people drink all the time, because I was no longer afraid. I was a afraid little kid my whole life, skinny little kid, and I had anxiety all the time, and I was always stomach aches or headaches. And man, this alcohol, this was it. And this was, I wanted to attain this feeling as much as possible. And I did. This was towards the end of my dad's drinking. And my dad came into program, and I believe it was 71. He passed away, and he had 39 years sobriety, and he passed away somewhere around 10 years ago. And he was a powerful example. And then my brother, he might even be on Zoom here somewhere, but I'm not very good with computers, and I can't even see who's here. So if you're here, Larry, that's awesome. he's got 48 years sobriety, which is really something. Then he got a son and a daughter-in-law from Virginia, Ryan and Candace, and they're probably on here somewhere. And they've got, I think, 7 years. I think 6 or 7 years sobriety. And then we got another son on the East Coast. He's sober too. And Larry's got a boy who's in the program. He's got quite a few years sobriety. And so to us, it's a family disease. And from my dad, actually my grandfather, yeah, he passed away as a direct result of alcoholism. So right on down the list. And just so what the program has done to our family is just a miracle. And my mom was a big member of Al-Anon. Naomi here, she's a longtime member of Al-Anon. I think she's got over 35 years. I've got 30 some years in Al-Anon. I also go to Al-Anon too. So I've got the called double winner. It's a double winner. Love here and announce myself. So anyway, at the end of my drinking, my dad had these big bottles of vodka, and I was, high school, and every day I would come home from school and take a big old water glass and fill it up with vodka, and then stand over the sink and try to drink it. And that was my social drinking, just chug vodka. And of course, it had all come back up. So I had to mix it with things and started looking for different concoctions to mix it with. And I found pickle juice would hold the vodka down and I wouldn't throw up. So I would make my vodka and pickle juice and then chug it down. And that's how I drank every day. And that was my social drinking. And talk about a screwed up household. My dad was a practicing alcoholic, and so was Larry and I. And remember, my mom used to buy these giant jugs of pickles, and she came out one time. She said, "Hey, there's this whole jar of pickles, and there's no juice in here. Does anybody know what happened?" And of course, I'm not going to say, "Yeah, I'm drinking the pickle juice." So anyway. But that's, from the very onset, early ages, I just needed as much alcohol as I could get as often as I could. And I became a daily drinker, every day. And, I just lived to drink. I just lived to drink. And like, just an example of what we would go out partying, we'd go out partying is, I'd go out with my brother and a buddy of ours and would each buy 2 bottles of wine, the top shelf stuff, Ripple or Boone's Farm or, Pagan Pink or Mad Dog, and you each chug a bottle of wine and then you kind of sip the other wine and then you get to the place where you're supposed to, be at. And, we'd go to the top shelf places like, a penny a beer, quarter a shot, and I was wondering what, on their way back, I don't know how it would even drive. One of us would drive and I wonder why we didn't get any girls. And, I was just a drunken slob and I'd pass out and fall down. But that's how I drank and that's all I knew. And, I didn't drink at work because once I took a drink, like if some guys would go out for lunch for a couple beers, no matter what job I had, once I took that first drink, I would last only maybe an hour at work and I'd have to leave and I'd have to run to a bar and start drinking right away. Because once I had that drink, I couldn't stop until I was done, and which was usually passed out. And I was a blackout drinker. I blacked out almost every time I drank. And so much of my life was just blacked out. And all of a sudden, at age 24, I kind of woke up and kind of out of oblivion thing. And I'm married and I got a kid. And oh, man. And, we didn't have very much money because before that, all of my money went for partying. It just went. And now we had somebody else, a little one to support. And, and so that's when my wife was cutting me off, my first wife. And, I was limited on how much I could spend on alcohol. And that's when the anxieties really started kicking in, man. Trying to, all day long, knowing that I could only have like 2 beers. And man, just anxious and freaking out all day long and anxious and afraid. And, those fears just grabbed me. And, I had those 2 beers and I couldn't fall asleep and I couldn't, it was just horrible. So eventually I got a better job and, started making more money. And as I made more money, I was able to, provide more alcohol. But before that, that's when I started the trek into, psychologists and psychiatrists. And, I spent at one time a whole year under care of, psychiatric help. And of course, the first question they would ask is, how much do you drink? And I don't drink that much, a couple beers here, a couple beers there. So I was never honest, and they could never help me when you're not honest. And that's kind of how my life went on at the end, and I just lived to drink and till I came in the program. And, just a couple of things, like I drive around, when the kids got a little older, they'd be in the back seat with a case of beer, handing me beers as we're driving around. And I remember getting fights more and more with my wife. She'd want, I'd give her a certain amount of money for food. And she said, we got to, have more money for food. And I said, that's all I've got. I don't have any more. But, an hour before that, I'm at the, beverage store buying my 2 cases of long neck 16-ounce, Blatz beer. I was like Blatz, the cheapest there was. And, buying a liter of 100 proof liquor, and that was hopefully make it through the week, but it usually didn't. And I'd buy her a big jug of wine, which I ended up drinking. And that's, I just live to drink. I just live to drink. Um, and then the blackouts, more blackouts and blackouts. And what kept me, I think, from AA was I worked and I was a factory worker for years. I was a machinist, and I stayed on night shift, like 5:30 at night to 4 in the morning, and 6 days a week. So there wasn't that much time to drink. And when I get home, I'd have a few, but then I kind of pass out. But then when I went on day shift, the last year, the year before I came in the program, that's when my drinking just took off crazy. And I'd get home, and within an hour I'd be blacked out. And that's when my brother, who was in the program, he said he and Dad talked about. He knew, I was kind of on the, that I was having trouble. And I remember when he came in the program, because he and I partied all the time. He drank, beer for beer, bottle of wine, and always drunk. And my sister too, she did some partying too. And then I remember when he came into AA, she called me up and she's crying. Larry joined AA. And she's crying. Like the world's coming apart. And I said, good, he needs it. He needs that program. Not me, but he needs it. So anyway, he approached me one of these times. And I'm at my dad's house, and my mom and dad, they didn't drink, and I was always hungover and went to visit. And he just asked me, he said, "So how you doing?" And I said, "I'm doing great. I'm controlling my drinking. I'm really controlling my drinking." And he said, as soon as he heard that, he goes, "Oh boy." And so, he called me a few days later and he said, "Hey, how would you like to go to an AA meeting?" And I should have said, my gut and mind should have said, "No, why do I need an AA meeting?" But I think that's when my higher power really starts stepping in for me. And I said yes. I said yeah, and he took me to a meeting in Menor, Ohio, there where my dad's home group, and I think it was his home group at the time, but I think there was like 100 people there. To me, it seemed like 1,000. And I didn't drink that day and go into the meeting. And I remember some point, he slipped a who me in my pocket, and I didn't even realize it. And I get home, and not having a drink all day, man, I, when I had my shakes, I was vibrating out. We have a hereditary thing in our family of some of us have an essential tremor, and at 18 years old, they said, "You got, I shake, and he said, "You got to, one of the things you have to avoid is alcohol." You drink alcohol, it makes you feel better, but it's going to do more damage to your nervous system. So obviously, I needed alcohol to quit me from shaking. Um, and I'm standing there, vibrating when I got home and holding this beer and wanting to chug it down. And I happened to notice the who me in my pocket. And it's like, wow, I just came from this meeting, with over 100 people that say they got a problem with alcoholism. Maybe I should do something. So I think it was about a week or maybe 2 weeks. I did a great job of controlling my drinking. I still drank every day. I never remember me saying, "I'll never drink again." I always said, "I'll do a better job of controlling it," because I had to drink. If I didn't drink, I was going to go crazy. And I thought the last probably 5 years, I thought of suicide all the time, because it was just horrible because I didn't drink during the day, and I'd go to work every day and I wouldn't have it in the morning, and I'd suffer through a hangover every day, because I remember my dad in the morning vibrating and trying to hold a glass of vodka to get down to make it through the day. And I said, when I get that bad, then I'll have to do something like my drinking like he did. So every day I suffered through the hangover, but as soon as work was over, man, I tied it on. Anyway, oh man, I'm kind of rambling. I haven't done this in a while. It's just kind of, and before I forget, Karen, thank you so much for asking me. Oh, God, and it's so good to see you. And Karen's husband who passed, Tim, he and I, we partied together, and back in the day, and we knew each other. We worked at the same car wash together, and we used to tell stories, the things we used to do there. Oh my goodness. And it was one of those, I'm sure you all have that when you walk into a meeting and you see somebody, it's like, Tim, what are you doing here? And he looks at me, what are you doing here? And he became one of our good friends. And Naomi and he used to, our one son, Ryan, in Virginia, his one meeting had Zoom. And during COVID, we ended up going to that every time. And Tim went to that. And it was touching. And when Tim passed away, the meeting, I think we talked about him the whole meeting, how he just touched everybody's heart. And we all loved him. And one of the guys that we really miss. What a great guy. And Karen, we're praying for you. We love you. So thanks for this. Okay, I'm getting taps from Naomi. Get going. So anyway, I did a good job of controlling my drinking when Larry asked me and went to the meeting. And then Friday came after a week of being, and I wasn't sober, but I just wasn't blacking out as much. I tied one on, I celebrated, and then I got to work in the morning, and I'm a machinist, and I usually run, things like 10 thousandths of an inch. I used to be one of the precision Class A grinders, and they moved me all the way down to the bottom, and I was just doing this easy stuff, and I scrapped out another part. And I remember telling the foreman, and he came up, and he didn't even yell at me. He just shook his head and walked away. And I thought, man, I got to do something because I'm about to lose my job here. In my brain, I just couldn't think. I just couldn't think anymore. So what I decided, and I like to tell this because it doesn't matter sometimes why you come in the program, but that you make it through the door. My thinking process was, because I had just bought this old rickety pickup truck, and I always wanted a pickup truck. I'm making payments on it, and it needs a transmission and everything. But my thinking was, if I lose my job, I won't be able to make the payments for the truck, and I'm going to lose my truck. So I better do something about my drinking. So that's why I got into AA. The screwiest reason, it doesn't matter why we get in, that we get in the door sometimes. So I came in, and I was about 6 weeks sober. I switched jobs. I wasn't supposed to. Everybody's telling me don't, he's not supposed to make big decisions first year, but I knew different because I was different. I was special. So I switched jobs, and the new jobs are about to fire me and let me go. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? And then my wife said, I don't want to be with you anymore, and the kids, and she took off. So there I am, 6 weeks sober, about to lose my job, trying to stay sober, and I'm a single parent with no wife, and trying to do all this on my own. And life got pretty crazy. I remember my dad, I'd complain to my dad how crazy my life is. And he said, I got to do this and that. He said, good, I'm glad you're that busy. Keep your mind off of other things. And remember, I'd be, complaining to Larry about it. Oh man, my brother, she's doing this and that. And he says, knock it off. He says, just concentrate. You got to take care of the kids. You got to go to meetings. You got to go to work. Just focus on that, one day at a time, one thing at a time. And then my sponsor, I went whining to my sponsor at one of the meetings, it looks like I'm going to be getting a divorce. And then at the meeting, he starts talking about his divorce, and this person talking about their divorce. Then pretty soon the whole table's talking about their divorce, and nobody's listening to poor little Roger. I need to whine to people. I need to let them know. So I went to a discussion group. This brings back some memories. I went to a discussion group, and believe it or not, the topic was self-pity. And and if they're going around the room talking about self-pity, and I'm building up, man. I'm getting ready. You guys don't know self-pity till you hear this story, And then as soon as it gets to me and I start telling them all my woes, this is going, and man, I just got started, and all of a sudden they kind of started talking to me, and eventually they're taking my inventory. It's a small discussion group. But I'm so grateful, and I tell that story when I remember to tell it. I'm so grateful that the people in, feel sorry for me. You know, do what you're supposed to do. Do the next right thing. My dad always taught action, action, action. Your actions will change your emotions. You know, do the next right thing. I've heard that so many times. And some of the good friends in our program always said, just do the next right thing. And 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 I found out in my 4-step inventory that my number one character defect was self-pity. So I wanted everybody to feel sorry for poor Roger. But I got through it, you know, and I kept going to meetings, you know, kept going to meetings, talking to people and things like and then my first sponsor had brain cancer, and he couldn't sponsor me, and he said Roger, you need a lot of you need a lot of help, and he said I just can't give it to you right now. I've got to work on my stuff. So he turned me over to my next sponsor, and they were really big on the steps, and we worked the steps and worked the steps, and I'll be forever grateful. And it was Linda, and it was a woman, and I don't advise, you know, cross, but my sponsor turned me over to her, and he said, you know, you need somebody, and you need her, and it turned out she needed me because she had a hard time staying sober, and then once she started sponsoring me, I think us working together, she stayed sober until she passed away. Um, Quite a few years ago, quite a few years after that. And I was grateful that she helped me through that time. For things like, you know, the first step of, you know, to me is that gut level, I am powerless over alcohol. And then, you know, the second step of came to believe, I came into program as an agnostic. But after, you know, weeks of in the program, this obsession was driving me crazy. Just, you know, I couldn't leave this obsession wouldn't leave me. And I'm thinking, if this doesn't leave me, I'm never going to be able to stay in the program because I'm going to go crazy and going to have to drink. And then I was started reading all these AA books, and like in Dr. Bob's book, you know, he said that his obsession to drink, you know, didn't leave him for like 2 years. I was like, oh my God, you know, I couldn't do, I knew I couldn't do it. I'd end up going back out or you know, whatever. And so then, you know, the old timers in the meeting, I heard a guy, they say, well, you know, you need to get down on your knees in the morning and ask for help. And at the end of the day, get down on your knees and thank your higher power, whatever your concept. But, you know, your alcohol is your higher power right now. You got to get something over that. You got to get a higher power over the alcohol. And I started doing that. I got down on my knees and said, you know, asked for help. And at the end of the day, got down on my knees and thanked, you know, my higher power. And miraculously, within 2 weeks, this obsession went away. It just disappeared. And it's been gone since then, you know, and I just celebrated, you know, 40 years yesterday. And even this morning, I don't get down on my knees as often as I used to because it's hard to get back up. You know, but say this morning, and I'm walking outside getting wood and feeding the animals, and I'm out there talking to, you know, God of my understanding, and, you know, doing my morning prayers. And I always do, you know, try to do the third step prayer in the morning. And I always do the first step. Every day I do the first step. I am powerless over alcohol. My life has become unmanageable every single day. And at night, you know, sometime while I'm in bed, I thank God and, you know, go over the day of keeping me sober that day. And it's been working, you know, for 40 days, and now I'm into 40 days in one day. So, you know, I'm not going to change that. And then turning my life over to the care of God. Number 3, that's just a daily thing. Like I said, the third step prayer. I told you I did the fourth and fifth step and found out my number one character defect was self-pity. And you got to get rid of that stuff. My sponsor always talked about it. You know, you got to, just like an old piece of furniture. I used to refinished a couple pieces of furniture in my day, and, you know, getting all scraping around and, you know, cleaning it off, and you got it in the grooves and that. And that's how you got to do your fourth and fifth step. And then 6 and 7, my sixth step was, you know, I just spent a lot of time on that. I became ready to have God remove all these defective character, and humbled myself on step 7, humbly asked him to remove my shortcoming. in 8 and 9, I did that, made that list, and it took me 5 years. But on my original list of amends, I completed everybody on that list. And then 10, 11, and 12, 10, the maintenance stuff, continued to take personal inventory, and when it was wrong, promptly admit it. In the first 5 years of sobriety, every year I took a written inventory. The big book talks about that, or 12 and 12, I can't remember one of them, that the first 100 found it very, it helped them to do a written inventory, a written on their 10 steps, a written 10 step. So I did that every year for the first 5 years, and every new sponsor I got, I would do a new 10 step. And when you're wrong, promptly admit it. I don't hang on to that stuff. I got to say it right away, or else it eats at me. And then 11 step, and then 12 step, continue to, I'm kind of losing my track here. Well, the 11th step, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understand, and praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. That became part of my life. Every single day I worked on that step. And then for the 12th step, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs. That's the promise to me. Spiritual awakening. I had a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience, because I worked the steps, because I worked the program. I'm not the same person today as I was when I came in, thanks to the program like that. And like before I get on to 11th step, I want to say that my wife left me, and she never came back. And I got a divorce after 6 months, and I was a single parent for several years, and they used to send people to me at the meetings, when guys would come in, and a lot of guys or women come in because their spouse or significant other would leave them, and they came into program like to get them back, and they would send them to me. Here, Dr. Roger, and first thing I said, well, my wife never came back, but I'm still sober today, and I'm going to meetings and stuff, and I tried the dating scene, and it didn't work. I was just fumbling around, and that's I resigned myself to being a single parent, and that's when God put Naomi in my life. And she went through a divorce, and she had a boy, and I had two boys. So we got together, and we had an AA Al-Anon wedding in our backyard, and we were blessed. She lived in Austinburg, Ohio, and we had about 6.5 acres and a pond in the back. And we started, getting this life together. And it was an old farmhouse. It was built before the Civil War, and it was 2 bedroom, 1 bath, and with 3 boys. We had to fix that right away. So we started, changing the house, remodeling the house, putting a bathroom in, and I ended up doing a lot of damage to myself as we were fixing it up. I guess I wasn't that good with tools and that. And like one time, I smashed myself in the face with a board and knocked my nose over a half-inch. And I remember, I'm full of blood, and I remember running out, and the kids. I showed the boys. I was afraid to show Naomi, and they looked at me both. Went, "Oh my God!" So, and Naomi threw me in the car and said, "We got to get to the hospital right away." So driving to the hospital, and I'm kind of bleeding all over and kind of passing out. How am I doing? She said, "Oh, you're fine. It's not that bad." Going, okay. When you get to the hospital and you got blood all over, as soon as you get in there, they rush you in pretty fast, and they rushed me in there. And this big old doctor comes, takes the rag off my nose, and he goes, "Oh my God, has his nose always been over there?" I went, "Whoops!" And I look at her, and she just kind of, "Oh well," So, oh my goodness, it's been a trip to go through life with somebody in recovery. And Naomi cut on the Al-Anon, quickly. And then she had her Al-Anon, and I had my AA meeting, and we've had, been through the years. It's been quite a few years and stuff. And I was about 5 years sober, and the boys were, all three boys were there. And then we got a petition around Christmas where my two boys signed a petition, and they did not want to live with us anymore and go back and live with their mom. And after 5 years sobriety, your kids don't want to live with you anymore. And I wanted to fight it. And my lawyer, who was a relative, he said, Raj, don't fight it, because your kids are going to get hurt. He said, just let it go. And one of those things, the third step, turn your life over to God. And just had to let them go, and that was rough. But people like Al-Anon AA friends of ours, couples would come over and meet with us and talk to us that have been through similar things, and so many things in the program is just a gift. I just like when my mom passed away. I can't remember the year. It's been quite a while. Huh?
90, I think.
In 90, okay, 1990. And I remember the outpouring, the AA fellowship at Al-Anon that came to her funeral was just so, I was just sobbing sometimes, seeing all the people come in for her, that all the lives that she had touched, and how much everybody loved each other. And I was so blessed to be in the program and with my family. And we'd been to conferences together and done all kind of things. And just, one of the things, and we went through life. And then, eventually all our parents, kept getting older, and, we're taking care of them. We're taking care of my dad and taking care of her mom, and, through all kind of ordeals, and they all passed. And, but, we get through it, and through the support and stuff. And then the 11th step, really became, like I said earlier, I did that every day, and God, what is your will to carry it out? What's your will to carry that out? And again, I told you I was a machinist, and I eventually moved up in the factory and became a foreman, and then a floor supervisor, and then manager of the whole department. I had almost 100 people working for me. And then the CEO of the company called me in there, and he said, "Hey, Raj," he said, "you're next in line to run the company. You're going to be the president and CEO of the company." And he said he was going to move out to another one. I remember going back to my office, and I'm not saying it to brag, but I owe it all to AA. Show up, do the best job you can, be honest and truthful. And, God blessed me with some gifts of machining and working with people. And, but I remember going back to my office, and I said, this is not God's will for me. I think I was 45, and I thought of just sitting in that office for, running that company for the next 20 years, and, to retire. And I thought, man, my gut was starting to, and I quit going to meetings like I used to. In fact, my home group members, thank God for home group members, got their finger in my, chest. Roger, you're not going to meetings enough. We're not seeing you enough. You're not above AA. Don't forget where your roots are and stuff. And I'll be forever grateful to that. And that's when my life really, the trajectory just changed. I quit that. I went back to running a machine. I stepped down from that position. I went back to school. And I barely, I was about a C minus student all through school. And I went back to school, to college. And for 3.5 years, I went to like seminary schools. And I was going to be a music minister. Naomi and I got involved in churches and doing a lot of music. And I just had a gift because I played in rock and roll bands and my whole life. And I was always, playing rock and roll. And now I was playing music in the churches, which just unbelievable. I'd think about it, talk to people. I remember one time, one church, I told the pastor, I said, man, I miss so much because I spent so much time in rock and roll, and I could have been doing this, for God. And he said, no, Roger, he said, you needed that training. Because with that training, now you're in churches, and the young folks, would come with me and to do these hymns, rock style, and do all this stuff. And I guess I had a gift for music of doing that. And then when I graduated from the course, the first church I was at that I was serving at the time as a music, I college, doing choirs and praise teams and stuff, they said, yeah, well, you are now officially our associate pastor. You know, you're going to be our associate pastor. And I go, what? I said, I'm the music guy. They said, no. I said, we've considered you our pastor for the last year. And then I started getting calls for other churches, and I started pastoring. And I was pastoring churches. You know, I did like 4 or 5 of them for several years. And again, it's all that you know, I owe it to the program, to AA, and I got to throw Alan on there too. Dealing with people. Whenever I was a pastor, my top drawer was full of literature from AA and Al-Anon. And most folks that came in had family members. They had family members dealing with alcoholics or drug addiction, you know, especially the young folks. So hand them pamphlets, you know, and I'd go to the meetings wherever I was pastoring. Here, there's an Al-Anon meeting. Let me take you there. Here, there's an AA meeting. Maybe I can take your kid or your spouse there, you know what I mean, or an NA meeting, whatever it was, you know, the program just keeps giving and giving. And then after so many churches, you know, God called me in and God called me out to not be a pastor anymore. And then I got called into hospice. I did hospice chaplaincy, and then I got hired with hospice, and I was a hospice chaplain for 10 years until I retired, and we moved up here. And that to me was that was my calling. I just loved being with folks, and you know, we called ourselves, it was Anamkaras. We were soulmates to walk with them in their final days, you know, into the next life. And I just felt so blessed. Well, and then our Naomi's son, he ended up with he's got an incurable disease, a nerve disorder. And he and his family and wife, he moved up here to Idaho when we were back in Ohio. And we kept coming up here for years trying to visit and trying to help him. And he had to go on disability. He can't work anymore, and trying to raise a couple of kids. So it was really a God thing that this property that we're on right now opened up. And when it did, you know, I called the realtor. He saw the realtor putting the sign up. He talked to her, and I called her, and within 5 days, we owned this property. And then we had that old house in Ohio, and they said it's going to take at least 2 years. You know, it's this old farmhouse. And the first person to walk through the door, they handed us cash. They said, we want it. We want to move now. It's like, oh, you know, I guess we're moving to Idaho. So we moved up here. Yeah, it was January 3rd of 2015. We left and moved up here. And our kid, you know, our son and his wife and the grandson and granddaughter live next to us. And it's been a trip. You know, the AA up here in Helena, you know, is pretty different than Ohio, you know. But now we've come, just like I said, they threw a big party for me last night, and I love the people. They're so down to earth, and it's a different AA, but it works, you know. And it's a small group, and then they didn't have an Al-Anon meeting at night, so you know, it's funny, one of the old timers up here, talking to her saying, yeah, there's not an Al-Anon meeting up here, and people keep coming to me and asking about an Al-Anon meeting. And then she said, well, I guess God's telling you need to start an Al-Anon meeting. So Naomi and I started an Al-Anon meeting, and we're into our 10th year now. So yeah, every Thursday night we do, and then kind of like the old style. And they have a potluck speaker meeting the first of the month, and all our Al-Anon group does, and then we break bread together, and then we have AA or an Al-Anon speaker once a month, and it's pretty cool. And it just works. It just works. And so grateful. She's watching the time. So many things have happened in 40 years, and just to be here and you know, be at just this age, and you know, you think about how you've gone through life and everything, and all that you've been through when you do these speakings. It just kind of brings a lot of stuff up. And I've always been told, especially like my brother, and so, you know, once you run out of words, like you're done talking, and I'm running out of words. But Karen, I want to thank you again. What a blessing to get to know you, and we sure missed him and all you other folks that are there. How awesome. And just what are the, like COVID, that's what I was thinking about today. Remind me about Zoom, all the crap that went on COVID. And man, I don't know, I started freaking out because they're closing everything and no meeting. And I always go to meetings, and uh, go to several meetings a week, and then here we are. We adapted. Zoom comes up, and then I'm one of the old farts up here, and then another old fart, old timer. She knew computers, so she started all these Zoom meetings, and she called me up and she said, "I need help with these," and he said, "I want you to help me." And I said, "Well, I'm not the computer guy." She said, "Well, I'll teach you." And we would sit there, and she would take over the phone and computer, and she taught me how to do things. And her and I were running, 5, 6 Zoom meetings up here a week. And then eventually, we trained other people, and, eventually the doors open up. And like our Al-Anon meeting, we still do Zoom. It's a hybrid. And we have people from Washington and once in a while California, and adapt to change. Bill Wilson, we got to adhere to the traditions, but also, life changes, the world changes, and we have to be able to adapt to that, or we'll not exist. And we need to be here. We are responsible. We need to be here for the next person coming in the door. And last night at the meeting, I celebrated my 40 years, but there was a guy there, his first meeting of AA there, and talked to him afterwards, and just like the Bill Wilson. I remember my dad, 80s, 30 some years sober. He's still making coffee, still chairing meetings. My brother, 48 years, still sober, chairing meetings, making coffee. Here's Karen, she's a youngster, probably, 35, chairing meetings. Yeah. We just keep, do what we need to do, and keep it going. So I'm going to stop jibber jabbing. Thank you for listening. Blessing to you all. And thank you. That's all I got.